So if you have been playing Sunless Zone Zero from day 1 and never miss a day, you would probably have the ticket to the standard character selector. You might already get your pick, or you haven't made up the mind yet. But if you're not like playing every single day and miss some of the weekly, you will probably get it tomorrow because you could get 5 standard pools in the shop, and I've made my choice. I picked Grace. In fact, there's a lot of things about Grace that couldn't be quantified, and that lead to majority of the content creators miss something extremely important with Grace. And to explain that in the most simple term, without bringing up numbers and theory, she's so freaking hot!
Yeah, I'm melodic from inside out, every little inch. Yeah, look at all my children, piece by piece, sucking my heart into it. Yeah.
So pretty much every single videos on the standard banner would tell you to pick Rina or sometimes Lycaon, and they're definitely right. And what I really do is to dive a little bit deeper to that and elaborate on it. So I've been running some tests between Rina and Lycaon, of course with MyScape 1 Rina. And I think I could conclude that if you have MyScape 0 Rina, MyScape 1 Rina is the way to go. Because MyScape 1 Rina is not only as good as MyScape 6 Lucy and Nicole. When I play her with Sokaku Miyabi team, MyScape 1 Rina actually outperformed Lycaon. I got a total of 30,000 score on the Deadly Assault Bringer, while my Lycaon, no matter how hard I try, with MyScape 0, with his signature Wenjin, the best I could get is a total of 25,000. So not only she outperformed Lycaon in that case, but I also want to point out that I'm not the most familiar with Lycaon and Sokaku, so it could be skill issue, but I do find playing Rina is much more easier than playing with Lycaon, because you don't have to worry about the stun window, because you have one layer less of the difficulties to worry about. If you want an in-depth guide about how to play Lycaon and Sokaku with Miyabi, I would recommend this channel, and this video is the most fantastic guide I've seen out there. And I think my final verdicts on the standard characters would be looking like this. If you have MyScape 0 Rina, M1 Rina is the way to go. MyScape 1 Rina is the strongest pick that you could get from standard characters. So definitely get her if you have MyScape 0 Rina. And generally the second recommendation would be Lycaon, because generally people would have Miyabi, or maybe you have Alan but for some reason you don't have Lycaon and you feels like you are lacking a team. And even if you don't have Miyabi and you are planning to pull for her on the rerun, you would still definitely want to go for Lycaon, because it's definitely not worth it to stress with RNG, and I would 100% recommend Lycaon over MyScape 0 Rina, because MyScape 0 Rina doesn't really do much. She's not even better than MyScape 2 Lucy or MyScape 2 Nicole. She's pretty bad at MyScape 0, and she's only as comparable as Lucy and Nicole when she's MyScape 1. She's probably one of the worst MyScape 0 to have, I would say. So I'm actually kind of disagree with this tier list for how bad she is. Her buff would only last for like 5 to 7 seconds, and it's gonna inevitably make her a quick swappy characters in the bad way. And unlike Nicole, even though Nicole is a quick swappy characters, the amounts of buffs she provides is significantly more than Rina, and that already put Nicole in a better spot than Rina. And she also takes a lot of energy when you use her skill, so she's not gonna have the buff available for every single rotation, and somehow makes her an incomplete character. And MyScape 1 Rina fixed all of that, extending her duration for another 5.5 seconds. And you could only have good uptime by having her MyScape 1. And I firmly believe that it is by design. Maybe it's because she got this indirect buff from the ultimate mechanics change in the patch 1.4, because her ultimate would also provide buff. So there's 3 ways that she could buff your characters. Like, one is obviously her skill, and second is chain attacks, and third is ultimate. And with 1.4 ultimate change, it is much easier to keep up her uptime in her MyScape 0. And the reason that I recommend Lycaon more than Rina is because I don't want to pretend that general player doesn't pull for Miyabi or not planned to do so. It's as simple as that, because Lycaon has such a great synergy with Alan and Miyabi. He's basically a free team for Miyabi, because sometimes you just gotta allocate your Yanagi and your other anomaly unit and your Astra to other teams, But with Lycaon, you can just pair Miyabi with Sokaku, then it's a complete team. And even if you have Lighter, Lycaon is still a really good pick, because let's say you have Evelyn and your Miyabi or Alan need a stunner, Lycaon would be a perfect candidate to fill that gap. And that leads to one tip that I think is totally broken. Let's say your Lighter has a signature W engine. You could also use it on the Lycaon when he's on different team on the Deadly Assault. And of course, this is a Deadly Assault specific tips. You could use the same W engine on 3 different teams. I find that out when I try to use the Lucy signature engine on all of the characters. Like my Sokaku and Astra and Lucy, they are all using exactly the same pieces of W engine. And by the way, the W engine that Evelyn is using is the most versatile W engine for the attackers. You could slap it on a random attackers and it would perform really close to their best in slot, or even better. And the third standard agent that I would like to recommend is actually Grace, and not Koleda. But with a catch, she needs another unit to ramp up her DPS with additional ability, especially with Rina, because one of Rina's additional abilities is to increase 3 seconds of anomaly duration of shock, and that 3 seconds is actually a flat 30%. So you do really want to at least have a Mindscape 0 Rina before you pick Grace. But I would still highly recommend M1 Rina before Grace, but you could pick Grace for the love of it. And the other condition that you could pick Grace is that you have a plan to pull for trigger, but you gotta make sure that the trigger's additional ability is going to work on Grace, which nobody can confirm now. You could check it yourself, but I would wait until it being confirmed. Now I have laid out all the conditions before you pull for Grace. Let's get into why. Because the Grace Rina duo or Grace Trigger duo is extremely versatile in today's meta. You could put in every single anomaly unit to fill the last slot and it's gonna work perfectly fine. Except Piper, cause she wouldn't get the additional ability. When you are playing Deadly Assault, you need like 3 teams, and I don't think everyone would have all the limited anomaly characters. Of course, it's not like this duo gonna came out with the strongest anomaly team, but she will definitely get the job done for you. And for Koleda, I couldn't really recommend Koleda unless you are in a really weird spot where you only have Evelyn and Soldier 11, and your Lucy Nicole is not Mindscape 2 yet. And you don't really have all the other stunner like Caesar or Lighter or even Qin Yi. And I've already talked about she is probably the worst unit out of all the viable units for the Evelyn and Soldier 11. And I'm not gonna lie, once your account began to get some decent unit, you're gonna find Koleda becomes really hard to fit in most of the team. And you would probably bench her before any other standard unit that I just mentioned. But no matter how bad she is, she's considered a support, and that put her in better position than Soldier 11 and Nekomata. Pretty much every single limited DPS in the game would outperform Nekomata by miles. So in terms of meta perspective, I couldn't really recommend Nekomata. I could see some potential when you pair her with Astra and Caesar, but still you need 2 really good support to make her viable in today's meta. And as for Soldier 11, you do want to use her with Lighter and Bernice, or maybe at least Lucy and Bernice, and capitalize on the Infernal Force set, which give her 28% crit rate, which is gigantic amounts of buff by the way. Just to make one thing clear, I already have Mindscape 1 Rina and a Lycaon, so naturally I would pick Grace. So I've laid out all the pros and cons picking the standard characters, but you should be the one who makes up your mind. But I also do think that whoever you pick, it doesn't really affect your account that much in the grand scheme. Anyway, I hope you have fun with the characters of your choice, and see ya guys.